The sun was setting over Los Angeles, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange. The city buzzed with life, as people filled restaurants, cafes, and movie theaters. Among the many families heading out for the evening was a mother and her young son. The boy sat in a wheelchair, his small hands resting on his lap, while his mother gently pushed him down the busy sidewalk. Tonight was special for them. It wasn't just another dinner. It was meant to be a little celebration after the boy's doctor appointment earlier that day. His mother wanted to lift his spirits and remind him that despite the challenges he faced, there were still moments to smile and enjoy. The boy's name was Daniel. He was only 10 years old, with bright brown eyes that sparkled whenever he talked about his favorite movies. He loved action films, especially those starring his hero, Keanu Reeves. He had posters of Keanu from The Matrix and John Wick taped neatly on the walls of his small bedroom. For Daniel, Keanu wasn't just a movie star. He was a symbol of bravery and kindness, someone who stood up for what was right. Daniel often dreamed about what it would be like to meet him one day, though he knew it was unlikely. Still, the thought gave him hope and excitement. His mother, Laura, knew how much these dinners meant to him. Life wasn't always easy for Daniel. His wheelchair sometimes made him feel left out or stared at, especially in public places. But Laura encouraged him to be confident and to smile, no matter what. As they reached the entrance of a well-known restaurant on a busy street, Daniel's face lit up. He had always wanted to eat here after hearing his classmates talk about it. The place was lively, with glowing lights, laughter spilling out onto the street, and the smell of fresh food drifting into the evening air. Laura held the door open and carefully pushed Daniel inside. The restaurant was crowded, with nearly every table full of people chatting and enjoying themselves. Daniel looked around in amazement, taking in the decorations, the soft music playing in the background, and the servers moving quickly from table to table. For him, just being here felt like an adventure. He leaned closer to his mom and whispered, "This is so cool." She smiled, happy to see him excited. A waiter walked toward them, holding a notepad in one hand. He was tall, with neatly combed hair and a crisp white shirt. At first glance, he looked professional, but his expression quickly changed the moment his eyes landed on Daniel's wheelchair. Instead of welcoming them with a friendly smile, his face twisted slightly in irritation. Laura noticed it right away but tried to ignore it. She was determined not to let anything spoil the evening. "Good evening," she said politely. "A table for two, please." The waiter sighed quietly, almost as if the request was a burden. He looked around the restaurant and then back at Laura. "We're very busy tonight," he said in a flat tone. "It might take a while to find space." Laura glanced around. She could see several empty tables that could easily accommodate them. Still, she kept her voice calm. "That's fine, we can wait," she replied. The waiter nodded but didn't look pleased. After a long pause, he finally led them toward a table near the corner. As Laura carefully helped Daniel position his wheelchair beside the table, the waiter placed the menus down with a quick motion, almost slamming them. Daniel looked up shyly, sensing the coldness in the man's behavior. "Thank you," Daniel said softly, trying to be polite. The waiter barely nodded and walked away without a word. Laura sighed quietly, pretending not to notice. She opened the menu and handed it to Daniel. "Look, they have your favorite pasta," she said with a smile. His face brightened, and for a moment, the tension faded. Daniel studied the menu carefully, asking his mom about different dishes. His excitement was genuine. He wanted to try something new, maybe even order dessert afterward. For him, this night was supposed to be fun, something to talk about the next day. But the joy he felt began to fade when the waiter returned. "Ready to order?" the waiter asked, his voice sharp. "Yes," Laura said kindly. "My son would like the spaghetti with meatballs, and I'll have the grilled chicken salad, please. The waiter scribbled on his notepad, then looked directly at Daniel. Do you need a straw for your drink? He asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Daniel froze. He wasn't sure how to respond. He could drink just fine without a straw, but the way the waiter asked made it sound like a joke. Laura's heart tightened. She kept her voice steady. A straw would be fine, she said quickly, trying to ease the awkwardness. The waiter smirked slightly, then walked away. Daniel lowered his eyes, suddenly feeling smaller than before. His earlier excitement seemed to vanish. He pushed the menu aside and played with the edge of his napkin. Laura leaned closer. Hey, she whispered softly. Don't let it get to you. You're amazing, okay? We're here to enjoy ourselves. Daniel nodded but didn't say much. His mind replayed the waiter's tone, and it hurt more than he wanted to admit. Around him, other customers noticed the exchange. Some looked uncomfortable, whispering to each other, but no one spoke up. The restaurant carried on with its usual noise, but for Daniel, the atmosphere had changed. Minutes later, the waiter returned with their drinks. He placed Laura's glass carefully on the table, then set Daniel's cup down a little too hard, causing the liquid to slosh over the rim. Careful, the waiter muttered, as if Daniel were the one at fault. Daniel's cheeks turned red. He whispered, sorry, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. Laura's patience was wearing thin. She wanted to speak up but worried about causing a scene in front of her son. Instead, she reached out and held his hand under the table, squeezing it gently to remind him that she was there. As the minutes passed, Daniel tried to distract himself by looking around the restaurant. He noticed a man sitting a few tables away, dressed simply in jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. The man seemed relaxed, quietly enjoying his meal while reading something on his phone. Daniel didn't recognize him right away, but there was something familiar about his presence. Meanwhile, the waiter continued his cold treatment, moving quickly whenever he passed by their table but never offering a smile or kind word. Every little action, from dropping utensils with a clatter to ignoring Daniel's attempts at politeness, felt heavy. The boy's earlier joy dimmed with each passing minute. Laura watched her son's shoulders slump, and her heart broke. She had wanted this evening to be special, but instead, it was turning into another reminder of how cruel the world could be. She sighed and whispered, hold on, sweetheart. Things will get better. Neither Laura nor Daniel realized that the man in the baseball cap had been listening and watching everything from the moment they entered. Behind the quiet presence was none other than Keanu Reeves, observing silently, his expression unreadable as he noticed the unfairness happening just a few feet away. The restaurant grew busier as the night went on. More families walked in, laughter and voices rising above the gentle music. Plates clattered in the kitchen, and waiters rushed back and forth, balancing trays filled with food. But at the little corner table where Daniel and his mother sat, the air felt heavy. Daniel tried to keep his smile, but inside, he felt smaller with every sharp word and cold gesture from the waiter. When their food finally arrived, the waiter set Laura's salad down neatly, but when it came to Daniel's plate, he pushed it forward carelessly. The spaghetti nearly slid off, and a little sauce splashed onto the tablecloth. Here you go, the waiter said with a forced grin, as though serving them was a chore. Thank you, Daniel said softly, still trying to be polite. The waiter didn't reply. He turned and walked away without another word. Laura quickly dabbed at the sauce with a napkin and looked at her son. Don't let it spoil your dinner, sweetheart. Enjoy your pasta. You were looking forward to it all week. Daniel nodded, picking up his fork. But his appetite wasn't the same anymore. Every bite tasted like a reminder of the waiter's rudeness. He twirled the spaghetti slowly, then glanced around the room. Everyone else seemed happy, laughing and chatting. Why couldn't their evening feel the same? Across the room, The man in the baseball cap, Keanu Reeves, continued to watch quietly. He had seen the waiter's careless behavior and the boy's shrinking confidence. He wasn't just another customer to him anymore. He was someone who deserved kindness but was being denied it. Keanu's jaw tightened slightly, but he stayed calm, waiting to see if things would improve. The minutes ticked by. Daniel tried to make the best of it. He asked his mom about her day, about what she might cook for breakfast tomorrow, and about a movie they could watch together on the weekend. His voice was cheerful on the surface, but Laura could see the effort behind it. She knew her son well. She knew when he was forcing a smile. Then the waiter returned, holding a tray with drinks for another table. As he passed Daniel, he paused and glanced at the boy's wheelchair. "Make sure you don't block the walkway," he said in a loud voice. Several nearby diners turned to look. Daniel froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. His cheeks flushed, and he quickly tried to pull his wheelchair closer to the table, even though he wasn't in anyone's way. Laura's eyes widened in shock. She opened her mouth to respond but stopped herself. She wanted to stand up for her son, but she also didn't want to cause a scene that might embarrass him even more. Instead, she leaned close and whispered, "You're fine, honey. You're not in anyone's way." But Daniel's heart sank. He had been trying so hard not to draw attention, and now all eyes were on him. He lowered his fork and stared at the table, wishing he could disappear. At the nearby table, Keanu set down his glass of water. His gaze sharpened as he watched the scene. He had seen people mistreated before, but something about a child being humiliated in public struck him deeply. His patience was wearing thin. Meanwhile, Daniel pushed his plate away slightly. "I'm not really hungry anymore," he whispered. Laura frowned. "But you were so excited about the pasta." Daniel shrugged. "I just don't feel like it now." Her chest ached. She wanted to hug him, to take away the hurt, but she also knew he needed to feel strong in moments like this. She reached for his hand under the table again and squeezed it gently. "Don't let one person take away your joy. You're braver than that." The waiter returned again, this time with dessert menus for another table. On his way back, he stopped at Laura and Daniel's table, tapping the edge of their plate. "Do you want me to pack that up since he's not eating?" he asked, glancing at Daniel in a dismissive tone. Daniel swallowed hard, unable to reply. Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. She spoke firmly, though her voice stayed calm. "He's still eating. Please leave the plate." The waiter raised his eyebrows, clearly annoyed, then walked away. Daniel blinked back tears, trying not to cry in front of his mother and all the strangers around him. He hated feeling weak. He hated that one person could make him feel so small. Across the room, Keanu's fingers drummed lightly against the table. He was known for being patient, humble, and calm, but there was a limit to what he could watch silently. His eyes followed the waiter as the man continued his rounds, still carrying the same dismissive attitude. The star inside Keanu Reeves, the actor people knew, remained hidden under his casual clothes. But the human being, the man who believed in kindness, was ready to act if needed. Daniel tried to distract himself by talking about his favorite actor. "Mom," he whispered softly, "do you think I'll ever meet Keanu Reeves one day?" Laura smiled gently. "You never know, sweetheart. Life has funny ways of surprising us." Daniel smiled faintly, but the sparkle in his eyes wasn't as bright as before. At that exact moment, Keanu's ears caught his name. He glanced over and saw Daniel whispering to his mother. His heart softened. The boy wasn't just any child. He was someone who admired him, someone who looked up to him as a hero. That made what was happening even harder to watch. Minutes later, the waiter came back again, collecting plates from another table. As he walked past Daniel, he muttered under his breath, "Maybe you should eat at home next time. This place is too busy for Special needs. The words were quiet, but Daniel heard them. His heart broke instantly. His hands trembled as he lowered his fork. His dream night had turned into a nightmare. He wanted to disappear into his wheelchair, to never be seen again. Laura gasped. She looked up at the waiter, her eyes flashing with disbelief. "Excuse me," she said, her voice louder now, unable to stay silent any longer. The waiter shrugged casually, pretending he hadn't said anything wrong. "I'm just saying we're busy, that's all." He turned and walked away before she could respond. The restaurant went silent for a brief moment. A few customers exchanged glances, whispering to each other. Some shook their heads in disapproval, but no one spoke up. Daniel's eyes welled with tears. He blinked quickly, but one rolled down his cheek before he could stop it. He turned his face slightly, hoping no one would see. Keanu had seen enough. Slowly, he pushed back his chair and stood up. His movements were calm but steady, carrying quiet authority. He removed his cap, revealing his familiar face. Whispers rippled across the restaurant as people recognized him. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" one diner murmured. "It is." "Oh my gosh," another whispered, pulling out a phone. But Keanu wasn't focused on the crowd. His eyes were fixed on the boy in the wheelchair, who sat slumped and broken. His heart ached at the sight. He took a step forward, moving toward their table, his mind clear on what he had to do next. For Daniel, the evening had started with excitement, turned into disappointment, and now, without him realizing it, was about to become unforgettable. The restaurant grew quieter as Keanu Reeves stood up from his table. At first, only a few people noticed, but as he removed his cap and began walking, whispers spread quickly across the room. "That's Keanu Reeves? It really is him," someone gasped. Phones slipped out of pockets, diners leaned forward, and the atmosphere changed. The man who had been sitting quietly in the corner was suddenly the center of attention. But Keanu's eyes were not on the crowd. He wasn't concerned about the whispers or the cameras now pointing in his direction. His focus was on Daniel, the young boy in the wheelchair whose night had been ruined by the waiter's cruelty. Daniel's head was lowered, his shoulders hunched as if he wanted to disappear. The sight pulled at Keanu's heart. He walked slowly, each step deliberate, until he reached their table. Laura, Daniel's mother, looked up in surprise. She blinked twice, hardly believing who was standing right there. Daniel raised his head slightly, confused at first, until his eyes met Keanu's. For a moment, the boy froze. His mouth opened a little, his eyes widening in shock. His hero, the man from the posters on his wall, was standing beside him. Keanu bent down to Daniel's level, lowering himself onto one knee so their eyes were equal. His voice was calm, steady, and gentle. "Hi there," he said softly. "I'm Keanu. What's your name?" Daniel's lips trembled, but he managed to whisper, I'm Daniel." Keanu smiled warmly. "Daniel. That's a strong name." The boy's eyes glistened with tears, but this time, they weren't just from sadness. He couldn't believe his hero was speaking directly to him. For the first time that evening, his heart lifted. The crowd watched in silence. No one dared to interrupt. They could feel something important was happening. The waiter, however, stood frozen near the counter, his face pale. Only minutes ago, he had been sneering at Daniel, acting as though the boy wasn't worth respect. Now, the very man whose movies filled theaters around the world was kneeling beside that same boy. The waiter's arrogance began to crack into nervousness. He hadn't realized who had been listening all along. Keanu gently placed a hand on the table and looked directly into Daniel's eyes. "I want you to know something," he said. "What just happened to you, the way you were treated, that wasn't okay. And it wasn't your fault. You deserve kindness and respect, always. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than who you are. Daniel swallowed hard. His hands, which had been trembling moments ago, slowly steadied. He whispered, but he said, his voice trailed off, unable to repeat the hurtful words. Keanu shook his head. Words like that don't define you. They say more about the person who speaks them than about you. You are brave. You are strong. And I'm honored to meet you. Tears slipped down Laura's cheeks as she listened. She had been trying all night to comfort her son, but in a few words, Keanu had given Daniel something she couldn't, the power to believe in himself again. The boy's eyes brightened. You're my hero, he whispered. Keanu chuckled softly. Well, tonight, you're my hero. Because it takes real courage to face the world with a smile when people aren't kind. And you did that. The restaurant erupted into quiet applause, not loud or chaotic, but filled with respect. Customers nodded, some wiping their eyes. They had all witnessed the cruelty, but they had also witnessed a moment of dignity being restored. Keanu then stood, his tall figure towering above, and turned his gaze toward the waiter. The man froze in place, suddenly feeling every eye in the restaurant burning into him. Keanu's voice was calm but firm, carrying weight. You know, he said, kindness doesn't cost anything. But the lack of it can cost someone their dignity. You crossed a line tonight. The waiter stammered, his earlier arrogance completely gone. I didn't mean. Keanu raised a hand gently to stop him. It's not about excuses. It's about choices. You chose to humiliate a child. That's not acceptable, anywhere, anytime. The manager, who had rushed over after seeing the commotion, stepped in quickly. His face was red with embarrassment. Mr. Reeves, I am so sorry. This behavior does not reflect our restaurant. I promise you, this will be addressed immediately. He turned sharply to the waiter. Go. You're done for the night. The waiter's face crumpled. He glanced at Keanu, then at the crowd, but no sympathy came. Slowly, he removed his apron and walked toward the back, his head hanging low. The entire restaurant let out a breath of relief. The tension lifted, replaced with admiration. People murmured to each other, praising Keanu for standing up, for using his voice when others had stayed silent. Keanu, however, didn't bask in the attention. He simply turned back to Daniel and his mother, his expression soft again. May I sit with you? He asked. Laura, still overwhelmed, nodded quickly. Of course. Please. Keanu pulled up a chair and sat beside Daniel, as though he were just another friend joining them for dinner. He waved for another waiter, asking kindly for more napkins and making sure everything was set right at the table. Unlike before, the new waiter treated them with genuine care, eager to make up for what had happened. Daniel could hardly believe it. His favorite actor was sitting right beside him, sharing a meal, treating him like he mattered. The sadness from earlier slowly melted into joy. Keanu leaned closer to him. So, he said with a small grin, what's your favorite movie? Daniel's face lit up. The Matrix, he said without hesitation. I've watched it so many times. And John Wick too. Keanu laughed. Good choices. Those are fun ones. Do you know a secret? Even though I've done a lot of stunts, I still get nervous sometimes. Daniel's eyes widened. Really? But you look so brave. Keanu nodded. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going, even when you are. Just like you do, every day. The boy smiled, his heart swelling with pride. For the first time in a long time, he felt strong not because of what someone else said about him, but because someone he admired had reminded him of his own worth. The cameras around the room continued recording, but Keanu didn't care. He wasn't doing this for attention or headlines. He was doing it because he believed in treating people right, especially those who needed it most. Laura watched quietly, her heart full. She had walked into the restaurant hoping for a simple dinner, but she was walking away with a memory that would change her son's life forever. As the evening went on, Keanu stayed at their table, chatting casually. He asked Daniel about school, about his favorite hobbies, and even joked with him about video games. The boy laughed more in that hour than he had in weeks. For everyone else in the restaurant, it was a night they would never forget. They had come for a meal, but they had witnessed kindness in its purest form. And for Daniel, it was more than unforgettable. It was life-changing. He had come in expecting pasta and a quiet evening. He was leaving with something far greater: the memory of the night his hero became his friend, and the moment when his dignity was restored in front of the world. The restaurant was no longer the same after Keanu Reeves sat down with Daniel and his mother. The quiet corner that had once felt heavy with embarrassment now glowed with warmth. Diners kept sneaking glances at the table, whispering softly, but no one disturbed them. It was as if everyone in the room knew they were witnessing something special, something much more important than a regular dinner. Daniel still couldn't believe it. A few minutes ago, he had felt invisible and unwanted. Now, his hero was sitting right beside him, laughing with him, asking him questions, and treating him as if he were the most important person in the room. The pain from the waiter's words slowly faded. In its place grew something else: confidence. Laura kept watching, her heart overflowing with gratitude. For years, she had been the one reminding her son that he was strong, that he was just as important as anyone else. But hearing those words from Keanu Reeves made them shine brighter than ever before. As Keanu and Daniel chatted, the restaurant manager returned to their table. He looked nervous and ashamed. "Ma'am, young man, Mr. Reeves," he began carefully, "I want to sincerely apologize for what happened tonight. That behavior is unacceptable in our restaurant. Please allow me to cover your entire meal. It's the least I can do." Laura opened her mouth to protest. She didn't want charity, she just wanted respect, but Keanu gave her a gentle nod, as if to say it was all right. He turned to the manager. "What matters most is that people are treated with dignity," he said calmly. "This young man deserves the same respect as anyone else in this room." The manager nodded quickly, his eyes wide. "Absolutely, sir. You're right. I assure you, the waiter has been dismissed for the evening, and further action will be taken." A soft cheer rose from another table, and soon, light claps echoed around the room. People admired the way Keanu had spoken, not with anger, but with authority and grace. Daniel's cheeks turned pink as he looked around. For once, the attention wasn't embarrassing. It felt good. People were clapping for him too, not just for Keanu. For the first time that night, he felt seen. Keanu smiled and leaned closer to Daniel. "See? You inspire people without even trying." Daniel giggled. "No, you do." Keanu shook his head. "We both do. Tonight, we're a team." The boy's grin widened. The meal continued with a lighter atmosphere. The new waiter who served them was kind and respectful, making sure Daniel had everything he needed. He brought extra napkins, refilled their drinks with a smile, and even asked if Daniel wanted to choose dessert first so it wouldn't take long. Daniel felt like royalty. As they ate, Keanu shared stories, simple ones, not about fame, but about life. He told Daniel about being nervous before his first big movie, about how he practiced lines for hours, and how sometimes, he still doubted himself. "Everyone has moments where they don't feel strong," he explained. "But that doesn't mean we're weak. It means we're human." Daniel listened carefully, soaking up every word. He was amazed that someone like Keanu, who seemed fearless on screen, could admit to feeling nervous or unsure. It made him realize that strength wasn't about never being afraid, it was about pushing forward anyway. At one point, Keanu asked Daniel, if you could be in any kind of movie, what role would you want to play? Daniel's eyes lit up. An action hero, he said eagerly. One who saves people, like you do. Keanu's face softened. You already are one, Daniel. Tonight, you showed more courage than many adults ever do. Sitting here, smiling, even after being treated badly, that's real hero stuff. Laura wiped her eyes with a napkin, pretending it was just from the bright restaurant lights. She couldn't remember the last time her son looked this happy, this proud. The customers around them continued to watch discreetly, touched by the scene. A few whispered to each other about how Keanu was known for acts of kindness, but seeing it in person felt different. It wasn't for publicity, it wasn't staged, it was genuine. As dessert arrived, Daniel's excitement returned fully. A big plate of chocolate cake with vanilla ice cream was set in front of him. His eyes widened, and he laughed happily. This looks amazing, he said. Keanu chuckled. I think we should share that. Don't you? Daniel nodded quickly, pushing the plate toward him. Together, they dug in, laughing as the ice cream melted too fast and dripped onto the table. The joy in Daniel's laughter spread to everyone nearby. But then, something unexpected happened. A man from another table stood up and walked over. He was in his late 50s, wearing a suit. His voice was steady but emotional. Mr. Reeves, I just want to say thank you. What you did tonight, it reminded me of something I should have done years ago. I once saw a child being treated poorly in public, and I stayed silent. I've regretted it ever since. But watching you stand up for this young man has inspired me. I won't stay silent again. The restaurant grew even quieter as people listened. His words touched many hearts. Keanu gave him a respectful nod. It's never too late to choose kindness, he said softly. Daniel looked around in awe. What had started as one man's cruelty had now turned into a ripple of goodness spreading through the entire restaurant. Laura leaned closer to her son and whispered, see what happens when someone speaks up? It gives others courage too. Daniel nodded, his chest swelling with pride. He wasn't just a boy in a wheelchair anymore. Tonight, he was part of something bigger. Keanu, noticing the boy's thoughtful expression, placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Daniel, the world needs more people like you. People who remind us what really matters. The boy's eyes glistened. But I didn't do anything. You're the one who helped me. Keanu smiled. You did more than you realize. You gave me a reason to stand up tonight. Without you, none of this would have happened. Daniel didn't know what to say. His heart felt full, like it might burst. By the time the evening drew to a close, the restaurant was filled with a strange, wonderful energy. Strangers had become witnesses to a lesson in kindness. A mother had seen her son's spirit restored. And a boy who had entered the room feeling small was leaving with the strength of a hero. As they prepared to leave, the manager approached again, offering another apology and promising that their restaurant would be a place of respect moving forward. He even offered Daniel a card for free meals anytime. Daniel smiled politely but shook his head. Thank you, he said softly. But all I want is for people to be nice. The manager's throat tightened. You have my word, young man. The crowd clapped once more, not loudly, but in gentle respect. Keanu stood, helping Laura adjust Daniel's wheelchair. Before they left, he bent down to Daniel again. Remember, you're never alone. And if you ever need a reminder of how strong you are, he paused, smiling. Just think of tonight. Daniel nodded eagerly, his heart soaring. Together, they rolled out of the restaurant, Keanu walking by their side like an old friend. Outside, the cool night air greeted them, and the lights of Los Angeles sparkled in the distance. What had begun as an evening of humiliation had transformed into one of the most empowering nights of Daniel's life. And for everyone who had been inside that restaurant, it was a memory they would carry forever. The night air outside the restaurant was cool and gentle, carrying the faint smell of city food stands and car exhaust. The street glowed with bright lights from shops and theaters. Daniel's wheelchair rolled smoothly on the sidewalk as his mother guided him, and Keanu Reeves walked right beside them. For a moment, it felt unreal, almost like a dream. People passing by turned their heads, whispering in surprise as they recognized Keanu, but he didn't pay attention. His focus was on Daniel, whose smile was now wide and glowing like a lantern. Daniel's voice was filled with awe. "I can't believe you came to sit with me. I thought I was just going to have pasta tonight. But this was the best night of my life." Keanu chuckled softly, his hands in his jacket pockets. "Sometimes life surprises us in the best ways," he said. "You just have to stay open to those surprises." Laura looked at Keanu with gratitude. "You don't know what you've done for my son tonight," she said quietly. "He's faced so many challenges. People don't always see his heart the way I do. But you reminded him how much he matters." Keanu shook his head gently. "Daniel already mattered. He always has. I just reminded everyone else to see it too." Daniel looked up at Keanu with shining eyes. "You really mean that?" Keanu knelt down again so he was eye level with the boy. "Yes, I do. And I want you to remember something, Daniel. The way you carry yourself, the way you keep smiling even when it's hard, that inspires people more than you realize. You have a gift. Don't let anyone make you forget it." The boy's chest swelled with pride. For once, he didn't feel small. He felt strong, like the heroes he admired in movies. As they reached the corner of the street, Keanu paused. His car was parked nearby, but he wasn't in a rush to leave. He wanted to make sure the evening ended the right way. "Do you like surprises?" he asked Daniel with a grin. Daniel nodded eagerly. "Yes." Keanu pulled a small notepad from his pocket, quickly scribbled something on a page, and tore it off. He handed it to Daniel. "That's my assistant's number. I'm going to send you something special in a few days. Some movie memorabilia, maybe even a signed script. Would you like that?" Daniel gasped. "Really? You'd do that for me?" Keanu smiled warmly. "Of course. But I want something from you too." Daniel tilted his head. "From me?" "Yes," Keanu replied. "I want you to promise me that you'll never let anyone's unkind words stop you from being yourself. That you'll keep dreaming big, keep smiling, and keep believing in who you are. Can you promise me that?" Daniel nodded quickly, his small hands gripping the paper tightly. "I promise." Keanu ruffled his hair gently. "Good. Then we're both heroes tonight." Laura couldn't hold back her tears any longer. She wiped them quickly, not wanting to embarrass her son, but her voice shook as she said, "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. You've given him something I couldn't give him alone. You gave him hope again." Keanu shook his head. Hope was always in him. It just needed a little reminder. As they stood there, a small group of people who had been in the restaurant came out. Some walked past quietly, offering Daniel little waves or thumbs up, others stopped to thank Keanu. But more importantly, they thanked Daniel too. One woman leaned down and told him, "You're very brave. You made us all proud tonight." Daniel's face glowed. He couldn't stop smiling. The walk back to their car felt magical. Every step, every word shared between them was etched into Daniel's memory. He told Keanu about his favorite video games, about how he once tried to write his own superhero story, and about his dream to someday make a movie where kids like him could be the heroes. Keanu listened intently, nodding, and encouraging him. "That's a beautiful idea, Daniel," he said. And you should write it? The world needs stories like yours. When they finally reached Laura's car, Keanu helped open the door and made sure Daniel was comfortable inside. Before closing it, he bent down one last time. Remember what I said. You're stronger than you think. And if you ever doubt yourself, think of tonight. Think of how you turned a bad moment into something powerful. Daniel's voice was small but steady. I'll never forget this night. Never. Keanu smiled, his eyes soft. Neither will I. With that, he gave Laura a respectful nod and stepped back. Laura whispered another thank you, her heart heavy with gratitude she could hardly put into words. Then she started the car. Daniel pressed his face against the window, waving as they drove away. Keanu stood on the sidewalk, watching until the car disappeared into the lights of the city. The next day, the story spread across social media like wildfire. Videos taken by diners inside the restaurant showed Keanu kneeling beside Daniel, comforting him, and speaking against the waiter's behavior. Millions of people watched, and comments flooded in, "This is why we love Keanu Reeves? What a true hero, both on and off the screen. That boy is an inspiration." News outlets picked it up too, not just praising Keanu but also highlighting Daniel's courage. Strangers from around the world sent messages of encouragement, reminding Daniel that he wasn't alone, that his story had touched hearts everywhere. When Daniel saw the videos, he was stunned. "Mom," he whispered, eyes wide, "the whole world saw what happened." Laura hugged him tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. And they saw how strong you were." In the weeks that followed, a package arrived at their home. Inside was a signed movie script, a few posters, and a handwritten note from Keanu. The note read, "To my friend Daniel, thank you for reminding me of what true courage looks like. Keep being you. With admiration, Keanu Reeves." Daniel held the note against his chest, tears of joy running down his face. His room, already filled with posters of Keanu, now had something even more valuable, a personal message that he would treasure forever. But the real gift wasn't the note or the memorabilia. The real gift was the memory of that night. A night that started with humiliation but ended with empowerment. A night where silence turned into applause, where pain turned into pride. And for Daniel, the lesson would never fade: one person's kindness can change everything. Keanu returned to his life, to his filming and travels, but he carried Daniel's smile in his heart. And Daniel returned to school, to his everyday routines, but he carried something greater, a sense of dignity and confidence that no cruel word could ever take away again. That evening at the restaurant became more than just a story. It became a reminder for everyone who heard it: heroes aren't only found in movies. Sometimes, they're found at the next table in a restaurant. And sometimes, they remind us that the smallest voice can carry the greatest strength when someone chooses to listen.